right, thank you for staying with us on Talking Business. Now, last week we discussed Finance Act 2020. All right, today's show we'll be looking at dealing with Nigeria's high recurrent cost, low revenue, and of course, escalating debt profile. But taking off from where we left last week, some persons outside of the show and even sending comments via Facebook talked about what the bank contacting next of kin of owners of accounts. If an account has been dormant for at least 6 years, some of them expected that the bank should contact the customer or the next of kin, letting them know that there's money and even find out why the accounts have been inoperative. So I have two gentlemen in the studio. One of them is Olatunji Badru, who is an ex-banker and also a legal practitioner. Welcome to the show, sir.
Welcome, thank you.
And of course, I have Mr. Eboigbe Emmanuel, who is a business analyst and economist. Thank you for coming on the show. This is our first meeting in the year 2021. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
All right, so I'll begin with you, Badru. Now, does the bank have the obligation to contact a customer or the next of kin of that customer when an account has been inoperative for a number of years?
Legally, and because there's a relationship, bankers-customer relationship, when the relationship is not exciting, when there's dormancy in the relationship, any of the parties are expected to activate it by communication, wanting to know what is happening. Your account has been abandoned for so number of years. But we observe in banking practice that they only do that to companies that are doing very well and that now the bank will not be making money from it, or they want to know why the company is no longer depositing money as it used to be. They will now follow up, writing to the company, wanting to know why they have abandoned their account. Because when they are operating their account very well, the bank will benefit. It's a win-win affair. The customer will benefit. But when the customer is no longer banking or it's like he has abandoned, they will follow up. But in respect of deposits specifically, there's no direct obligation that when you abandon your deposit balances in the deposit money banks, that you now have to, the bank is now obliged to write the customer. Say, please, come and activate your account. But in the other sense, when it is not a deposit, if the man is maintaining a relationship, there's a lot of the bank account has been booming, and now suddenly there's a diversion. Suddenly there's an abandonment. In most cases, relationship officers, they will write, they will follow up, they will visit to ensure that there's a renewal of a relationship. But when it concerns balances, huge balances, which the bank is making use of at a little or no cost, it's like the bank now is being asked to invite those people to come and collect their money. And now they are using the money at little or no cost. Why I say little or no cost is that in some cases when an account is abandoned after 6 or 7 years and there's a huge balance, the person now gets to the bank, he asks for his money. The bank will just say, you have abandoned your account. The balance, they will release it to you. But if you are conscious of your right, say, you have been using my money. My money is there. Are you supposed to pay me interest? I'm talking from a practical experience. Then the bank will now be aware, this person, he knows his right. They will now calculate interest and add interest to it. But in most cases, if you do not complain, you abandon your account. So I'm sorry. What is the balance? They give the balance to the. So if you now has a bank that will be now calling on the people, please come and why your deposit is there, it has not been touched. Want to know?
So it's not done. It's not done because of the benefit.
Yes.
But legally, does the bank have that obligation to contact? It's only when there's relationship. What about the next of kin? Should the bank contact the next of kin, being unable to reach the owner of the accounts?
Definitely the bank always
maybe for one reason or the other.
Address. The last known address of the definitely when you open your account, you have an address, and that last known address is the one they will try to reach the customer. But like I told you, when it is a dormant savings account balances, huge balances, some having 100 million, 50 million, then you want the bank to now, right, please come. Why are you not withdrawing your money? Why are you not paying?
Okay. It's like they want to disturb their business flow. Okay.
So it's because many of the banks, they are relying on this huge deposits from the dormant balance account.
Okay. All right, Boigbe, let's look at why the government is seeking to borrow unclaimed dividends and funds from dormant accounts.
Okay, let me quickly add that since there is a relationship, well, of course there is a relationship. What relationship? The relationship starts from opening of account.
Okay.
So whether it is deposit account or asset account, that is loan account, there is a relationship. I do not know about the legal provision. The relationship requires that from time to time you should get back to the customer and ask. You may not know that the customer is deceased.
Okay.
Just to ask, why have you not been operating your account? And I think banks are doing that presently, excepting that there are not, they need to improve on it, because there is this text messages, for instance, which is sent to you. Well, these are automated contact to send to you on that phone number which you have on the account.
Okay.
Say, why have you not operated your account in the last 90 days? That's on that. The bank is under, I don't know about obligation, but as a relationship thing, required to get across to customer. But having said that, the new law signed into action for use of dormant account deposit above 6 years or
unclaimed dividends
is just another way of managing supposed excesses in the system.
Would you describe that as excesses, since their money is deposited by individuals or even accounts?
This is the way it works. The CBN is supposed to be the regulatory authority over banks, as well as the Ministry of Finance also supervise the SEC.
Okay.
So these are the two organizations that is creating a trust fund, as it were, a trust fund from these idle balances.
Okay.
Now, these idle balances also, if not mopped after some time, you will begin to suspect fraud on those dormant accounts. You begin to suspect diversion on those unclaimed dividend balances. So, a trust fund, as it were, a trust fund is to be created for this fund after 6 years of unclaimed dividend,
okay,
and then balances. That's where it is. So, it is not that federal government says, give it to me. Is that a trust fund, and that trust fund is going to be managed by Federal Ministry of Finance, as well as Debt Management Office, a representative of CBN, 2 registrars, and I think there were 6 or 7 persons on the board of that trust fund.
Okay, before you go further, you just said that it's not as if the government is saying, give this money to me. Now, if the government is creating a trust fund where these monies will be put together and they say they want to borrow and pay interest on it when owners of these dividends and accounts show up for claims, what would you call that?
Anyway, let me quickly chip in something there. The principal aim of them setting up this unclaimed fund, trust fund, is because of the problem the government is facing right now on trying to finance the deficit budget.
Okay.
And from their calculation, a lot of trillions of naira are expected from this source alone to be able to finance the budget, because they have been taken out of the box to see which areas can they get is a low-cost fund to be able to finance the budget. That is why they came out with not only this, there are many other measures. This was one of the major measures they brought out to be able to finance our deficit budget, which is 5.6 trillion. So they are aware that they are going to get a very sizable amount from this trust fund, and they are aware of it. But in order to appease the people, they are now saying that if you want to collect your money back, you will get your money back, and you will even get interest on your money, provided you provide relevant documents to substantiate your claim. So we need to get this point clear that the principal aim, the major aim, why they are looking into this unclaimed dividends and dormant account is for them to finance the deficit budget.
Okay.
Which is 5.6 trillion.
Okay. Now, since you mentioned the budget, now let's come to today's discussion proper. The 2021 budget, in fact, it didn't begin with the 2021 budget. We've always seen that year after year, when a budget is released, the breakdown shows that recurrent expenditure takes a large chunk of the budget. Capital expenditure gets less than recurrent expenditure. So how do we deal as a country, or how does the government deal with high recurrent costs?
It is not a rule that every year recurrent expenditure will increase.
But that's how we've come to see it.
But that's how we've come to see. But this year's own particularly, the reason given for the high recurrent expenditure, which is somewhere around 5.65 trillion, it's arising from the fact that while last year's one was somewhere around 4.9, it's arising from the fact that the government is looking at exciting the economy a little to cater for the drop in revenues that has arisen from COVID-19 impact, loss of job, and looking at providing some form of relief. So I think that basically where it is coming from. It's not like it's a common practice for recurrent expenditure to be always increasing.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I would have said, okay, let's rest it there.
Let me quickly add something there. The major reason you see why the recurrent expenditure has gone so high now is because of this, the minimum wage.
Okay, that has been raised to 30,000.
It's a major factor. Before now, they were spending 201 billion every month for salaries and statutory transfers every month, and they were spending 120 billion just to service the debt every month. But now it has gone so high because of this increase. There is even suggestion now whether should they go back.
Is that possible?
To the 18 million.
Is that possible?
80,000.
Given the cost of commodities.
No, there's a plan last year. Okay. I don't know how it would turn out. 774,000 youths. That has
been inaugurated and flagged in January.
For 1,000 local governments.
There's also this expectation that 250 billion monthly for youth investments. So those are reasons why the recurrent, and it's still all going towards the fact that they need to gear up activities in the economy.
Okay. Now, setting the case of this year aside, which seems to be a peculiar case, what about other years? Like I said, we've seen that happen before now. And who's to tell what the budget for 2022 would be? So how do we ensure, or how does the government ensure that it's not a regular thing? You always have recurrent expenditure way higher than capital expenditure.
Okay.
What are the areas that would seem to have too much that should be maybe brought down, or we can even do without?
Recurrent expenditure may always be expected to go up if services are better. If we want to improve on services, that's what we call for it. But the question would be, if we get to zero down on what are the real issues in items that makes for that volume. But for this year's own, we've been able to identify the key issues. One, the implementation of the salary increase, minimum wage increase, the 774 youth employment, the 250 billion monthly.
Okay.
This thing. But it's as it comes. I think you take it in its merit and see, does it help the economy or hurt the economy. If it
Okay.
helps the economy in the long run, why not? You would want to, for instance, social investment certainly will help the economy in the long run. So
Okay.
those are the things that we are investing in. Anyway, capital investment is still very critical to our economy, the sustenance of our economy in the future.
Okay. All right. Now, we keep saying that our debt profile is growing, while some are saying that the debt profile as against the GDP is still within a safe threshold. I don't know if you agree with that. We are also saying that the debt servicing ratio to the revenue, debt servicing to revenue ratio is really is very, very high. So how do we deal with that, Badru?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is that one is that the federal government should look inward by trying to. There's no way we can do away with borrowing, because if you look at the situation now, there's no way the internally generated revenue can be able to provide the necessary revenue to finance the budget. So I think what the government needs to do now, one, is to make sure that they go back to that 2017, what was introduced in 2017, when the vice president was the acting president, this voluntary asset and income declaration scheme. It was a scheme to let people who have not paid their tax for some years now, to now grant heavy concession to them. Because that time they introduced that thing and they gave a deadline. A lot of money was recovered. Millions were recovered before they stopped. They should reintroduce it. There are still many people who have not paid tax. So that voluntary asset income declaration scheme should be immediately reintroduced. And they should also reintroduce what they call community tax liaison officer. They are the people to ensure compliance, tax compliance. They are the people to go to companies they identify they have not been paying tax, to tell them the need to pay tax, and if they refuse, they are to report them. Every community, they have thousands of city community tax liaison officers. They follow up, and when those things, when they are brought in, they will help, because many people, there are a lot of tax evasion. So they should encourage, there should be tax concession, and they should avoid double taxation. When there's double taxation, people don't want to pay tax.
I was coming to that, because when we talk about taxation, we have three, we have the federal government, the state government, and the local. Now, the state government may be taxing a particular business.
Yes.
The local government in which that business operates may also be taxing.
So, to stop that, there's need for enactment, laws, making sure that they try to, there's a dichotomy, there's a clear separation between a local government tax, state tax, and federal tax, and they should not be taxing the same item. And look at VAT now. So they should, those people that should pay VAT should be those people that are really consuming that thing. You see that some people now benefit from VAT, and in that area they are against, like selling of beer, all those things they don't sell, and but the people get. So there should be reappraisal of our tax system. There should be incentives to make people to pay tax, and there should be what I call internal borrowing, whereby the usual CBN treasury bills with attractive interest, although it's on a short-time basis, then the federal stocks, the federal government development bonds, all these things can help in no way, in no small way, to get revenue. Because if we have revenue, then, you know, when we talk of this recorded expenditure, one of the things we must take into consideration is inflation.
Okay. Because
there's over-invoicing, and the cost of all these things have gone up. So they should try as much as possible to introduce measures, and if they are to go abroad, the loans they must get should be loans that will be directed to infrastructure.
Yeah, I was going to ask that even when you borrow, what should our borrowings be channeled into, Eboigbe?
Yeah. Okay, let me add that one way to increasing our non-oil revenue particularly is looking at the informal sector, increasing the dragnet of our tax revenue base. That's basically.
But would we find compliance, apart from companies, in a time where people are complaining of low income, people are complaining of being out of jobs, would many comply with taxation?
Blessing. Part of the challenge we have, which I think we need to solve very quickly, I said that in one or two other interviews, is that of data.
Okay.
If we, in a world where ICT run almost everything, it will be difficult for people to avoid paying taxes when they are captured in the net. So that's a discussion for those in the ICT environment. But talking about what loans should be used for is for me more particular, because loans are not bad in themselves. It is the purpose for which our borrowing is made for. If we are borrowing to pay salaries today, if we are borrowing for recurrent consumption, what does the future hold for us? Just like Badru said, if our borrowings become purposeful, that is project-tied, then of course we know that there is great future lying ahead of us, because those projects, once those projects becomes operational, those projects have the capacity to generate revenue for the economy. Those projects have the capacity to generate employment. Those projects have the capacity to generate production. So that's the way we should be looking at it, that by today, if we need to suffer today, it means we are preparing for a better tomorrow. So that haven't been the case. Or the case is that most of our loans for even projects are mismanaged. And maybe perhaps while we are trying to improve on our revenue, we should look at making sure that our projects loans are directed to projects that will, better our economy in the future.
Okay, talking about improving our revenue, for now we're still depending on crude oil to bring our major revenue, and that is just hanging in the balance. Today it could go up, tomorrow it could come down. So how do we now improve revenue at a time when we're talking about dealing with COVID-19 pandemic?
We're still looking at improving revenues, non-oil revenue particularly. Reason is, when we talk about giving loans to youths, certainly they are looking at improving their productive capacity. Revenues will come from, tax revenues will come from those.
Okay, so that's when the tax coming.
Yes, so there are still a number of ways we could look at improving on revenue generated from non-oil sources. So COVID or no COVID, for instance, the target of this year's budget is recovery and resilience. So we hope to better the revenue stream of the economy.
Okay, we'll add to that.
What I will add to that is that the government should look at the government establishments, the ministries, the agencies, those who are generating funds, like NNPC, custom, and the like. These people, over time, there's no prompt remission of revenues or operating surpluses, and this has affected our revenue profile. So I think that there should be more they should monitor them, making sure that operating surpluses are transferred to the revenue base of the government. Because in last year, when the National Assembly through their oversight function, they discovered that some of these federal ministries or agencies that are generating revenue did not remit the surplus, did not remit the revenue, thereby denying us of having sufficient fund to finance the budget. So I think that we should look at that. And the second thing too is that they should try to curb wastages. The idea of going at the slightest opportunity, they go abroad, extra costs and all those things, they should try to reduce it so that overhead cost is reduced drastically, so that you can get something for the capital expenditure, so that we can unlock our economy with our infrastructures. You see, now we are still importing powder milk and all those things, whereas the cow farm in Taraba, in other northern states, if the infrastructures are available, we don't need to import powder milk. We need to invest, and there will be direct foreign investment in all these things, so that we can pick up. We know we spend so much money on power. Over $15 billion have been spent on power, and we have not been able to see the result, because when we talk of the economy, the power has a role to play. Because people spend a lot of money in getting generator, getting diesel to fuel their things, and this is cost. It's a part of the current cost. So if they can also look at the power and address it holistically, I think we go a long way.
Okay.
I think the single treasury account thing is actually supposed to capture leakages in tax collection. Is just like people will commonly say that we have the best policies, we have
implementation.
So infraction on collection should be taken very, very seriously.
Okay.
Otherwise, that single treasury, that was all the single treasury.
That was the purpose.
But the purpose of it.
Okay. Now let's come back again to borrowing. Now, our debt profile. What's your thoughts on that?
The debt profile is really too high now. 32.2 trillion.
Yes.
And 62% of it is domestic debt, while 37% point is foreign. So looking at it is very worrisome. Why is it worrisome? Because of the amount of money that we are going to be spent in servicing those debts. And like IMF fiscal policy expert, one Caroline Patillo, said recently, he said 2/3 of all tax revenue in Nigeria is spent to service debt. 2/3 of all total revenue in Nigeria. So you can now see that, how can we develop? It will affect us. That's why borrowing. And if you look at our debts, we have not talked about the pensioners, the government contractors, the marketers. If all these ones are not factored into the debt too.
By the time we add, by the time we add that to
by the time you add to it,
is there anything left?
You see, and you are going to pay them. Is their right to be paid, pensioners. So when you now look at it critically, you see that we really need to sit down. Like what we said just now, that our borrowing, they are not well monitored, not well evaluated. So because of that, even there are cases of diversion. And look at those debts to money they recover, stolen money. And this is supposed to be part of money they use in financing the deficit last year. And more are still being recovered every day. We are hearing they are recovered. All this money should be used to cushion the effect of borrowing. So looking at borrowing, we have no choice. We are still going to borrow, either internally or externally. But like we have discussed now, if we are to borrow, it must be for a purpose, must be linked to a project. Because bilateral loans, they are usually linked to a particular project. So, and it should be well monitored and spent so that our economy can pick up. There will be industrialization, because we need social infrastructure to be able to get our economy going, to unlock the economy.
Okay, all right. Talking about debt servicing, we don't have enough right now, but we have a huge debt that must be serviced. Do you think that we're ever going to be able to service the huge debts that we have, and more that we're also going to borrow. Some are saying in some quarters that perhaps Nigeria should be thinking and praying for an opportunity to ask for debt relief. Are we getting to that point?
Debt relief is going to come at some point, like it has come in the past. The advice would be, when it does come, we should utilize those opportunities, to better our future. The first question is, are we ever going to get out of the debt?
Yes. Are we ever going to be free?
Free from debt? I would say,
if not totally free, at least free to an extent where we can conveniently service the debts.
Being in debt is not as bad as not being able to pay your way. That's just a simple way to put it from the economics point, because big economies of the world also borrow. But the question,
when we talk about big economies, and we make comparison, are there basis for comparison really, judging right now economically between Nigeria and those economies?
The basis for comparison presently is that we are comparing ourselves with whether are there not economies that are bigger than ours that still borrow. The answer is yes. There will be need for comparison. But the basis for comparison therefore should have been borrowings met for, and how prepared are we to better deal with our future financial position. So that's where my worries are. Because if you are borrowing to better your productive capacity, why not? It makes that today you may that to have bettered your productive capacity in the future for is to today develop our social capacity, which, well, it looked like what this year's budget
trying to address.
This year's budget is trying to address that. In the last 3 years short-term budget, that's what it's looking at. The next 3 years budget, that's what it looked like it's looking at. Then the last 3 years plan, that was part of what it was targeted at, to make sure that we develop our social capital. If we are able to do that, creditably, borrowing for me, yes, we are presently neck deep in borrowing, and it looks like it's huge. I also think that at some point in the future we would be preparing because where relief will come from is when your creditors see that you are trying to better your economy. So relief don't just come
like that.
So it is what we presently do that will present us or qualify us for relief. So someday I am hopeful that we will get out of debt, either through relief or bettering our productive capacity. So
now, where would we likely get relief from, being that all our debts are not from one place, some are domestic and some are foreign? Where would we likely get relief from, Badru?
Definitely, both foreign. If you look at in 2005 to 2006, Nigeria were having 30 billion debt, foreign debt. That is $30 billion debt. And we had people were canvassing for us, different organizations were canvassing for relief, and the London Club. Their position was that Nigeria, they are going to write off $18 billion, while Nigeria should pay $12 billion. And we saw more courage to pay that $12 billion. But the sad aspect of it is that despite all what we did and the level of our debt, Ghana, Zambia, and other countries, they were given 100% relief. They were not.
Now, why do you think that happened?
Is
it that by their assessment of Nigeria, they felt that we're capable of repaying the others?
So aside from being capable, they also looked at what the debt were
used for.
Okay.
And then looked at your readiness to take
dollars as foreign debt, which now catapulted to the local. There must be negotiation and appeal. So we have what we call a interest waiver, concessions, restructuring. All these things will come in.
At what time?
Huh?
At what time?
At what time?
At what time do you think they're going to come in?
The time is even now.
Okay.
Because the debt is alarming now.
Okay.
this amount, what we are now. So this is the right time now for them to start. And they start from, there are pressure groups. Oh, debt is not one side. It's both external and internal. And compensated.
Okay.
And they were compensated.
Well, at least they got us what we wanted.
Yes.
Okay.
So they should start it now. To answer your question, it's now. Because the debt portfolio now is alarming.
Okay.
And everybody is concerned because the amount we are spending on servicing. I just told you what Caroline Patillo said for servicing.
So one fair just goes to
imagine
every other thing. Okay.
But just to add, I will tell you that that consciousness is already there.
Okay.
Because this portfolio, having to mop this portfolio of the dormant account, even though it's looking like it's controversial or there are still gray areas in the financial policy, has to make sure that we're looking at our debt profile and how to manage it in the future.
Okay.
So this dormant account thing, and there are all ways to make sure that we look for cheaper, better,
low cost
way of financing.
But would that not have a boomerang effect on the banks?
Certainly will. For
Borrowing from unclaimed dividends and would it not have a boomerang effect on banks?
It will reduce the capacity of banks.
Doesn't that make it counterproductive?
Deposits, to reduce deposits drastically, because most banks, about some banks, you see that 10%, 20% of their total deposit is just dormant. On claimed dividend, dormant.
If that is pulled out, how do the banks survive?
Yes.
And how do they assist businesses?
The bank will still survive. After all, most banks now, you see, we talk of holding companies,
okay.
we talk of merger.
Divesting into other things.
The bank will survive because there are other non-deposit fees, transaction-based
that they
fees,
get money.
credit.
We reduce drastically.
Okay.
Because they rely on that the money to give out. They don't have their own money pass. It's the money they have, and to have a multiplier effect. But if you look at it, it will help the government to be able to prosecute the budget, to help the government to finance the budget, to help the government to be able to.
All right.
They are still computing it.
Okay.
Only active accounts now, they have 111 million active accounts. The dormant account, the number is
higher than that. Okay, as a wrap up, let's to people every once in a while, perhaps